Hi everyone, it's Nicole here with a couple of cards featuring the Spellbinders January 2019 Large Die of the Month Club Kits. This is the Cherish die collection. If you have been following me, you have probably seen some cards featuring dies from this set used with my Glimmer of the Month projects and my Small Die of the Month projects. I love how interchangeable the dies are and how you can really mix and match. This set of cards is going to really focus, especially the first card, on the large die of the month kit only. And then my second card is going to incorporate the small die of the month dies used with the large dies. We are starting with the large die of the month club kit dies. I have die cut the heart decorative shape with the heart shaped die and also the vines, and I flipped it over and I am gluing those vines in place to the back of my frame. I love that you can use the dies together. You can kind of see them there to the left of the screen or individually. Just depends on what you need them for. If you did end up getting the Glimmer die, or pardon me, the Glimmer hot foil kit of the month before it's sold out, you know that the heart shape will coordinate and work with the Glimmer hot foil plates from that as well. So very interchangeable, super awesome dies this month, great for love themed and Valentine projects, which I absolutely love to create. So I want to get these vines on the back of here. You could do this in a different color of cardstock if you wanted it to show up. My cards today are red and white. I went really traditional here. I've tried to do something a little different with all of my Valentine's cards featuring the Spellbinders club kits this month, different color combinations. However, many of them feature my heart offset either down near the bottom, up near the top, but not centered. And it's just, I think it's something that I'm drawn to right now, maybe especially with this size of dies. So it's something I have done quite a bit of. I love that when you're inspired to create something, you can recreate it in many different ways, which I hope I have shown with all the different projects I've made with these dies this month and this offset heart. No matter what color combination or what products you're using. So lots of ways to do or create this kind of a card with a heart-shaped die. You could also do this with circles and other shapes as well. I am going to take the foam insert out of my MISTI and I am going to use this large background. This is the Simon Says Stamp Diagonal Stripes, which is one of my most often used. In fact, it's a cling stamp. It was not wanting to cling to my MISTI. I had to kind of press it down there in place. I've got a white cardstock background here that I am going to ink up with a clear embossing ink on the white cardstock and then use a sparkle embossing powder from Hero Arts to add a tone-on-tone decorative background. So something a little bit different than plain white. I wanted my background to have some sort of interest, but I really wanted the focus of the design to be on this heart where we're going to have our die-cut greeting. We're going to decorate with some flowers and even a little stamped phrase. But I didn't want the background to be completely plain. And a great way to do this is a tone-on-tone effect. Both of my cards are going to feature a tone-on-tone effect, just a different kind. I wanted to showcase this technique in both cards, but they are completely different designs. This one is very much the focus on the heart, the large die-cut sentiment, and a smaller phrase, and of course the cute flowers. The second card I'm going to share is going to incorporate the small die of the month, which features those great paper doll building dies, and also some of the florals and things, but not the exact same design, not even the same background stamps, not the same sentiments, but elements of both cards are the same. And this is one way to create a tone-on-tone background. The addition of the sparkle embossing powder makes this sparkly makes it have that nice little shimmer when you turn it at an angle, but yet still gives it an awesome tone-on-tone effect. If you don't want the sparkle, you could always use white embossing powder and you're going to get that glossy white on white stripe finish. You could use regular clear embossing powder, and you're going to get a clear raised finish. So there's lots of ways to do this. You could do this on any color of cardstock to get that great tone-on-tone effect. And the diagonal stripe is one of my most often used background stamps. There's many different companies that sell a background stamp with a diagonal stripe, maybe different widths and things, and I think they are a fantastic addition to your stash because they work with so many different designs. I have taken my dies apart. I am going to die cut just the plain heart shape from my background, and that is so I can raise the front panel up a little bit. This is also going to give a great little element of dimension to our card, and this is something that I'm going to use on both card designs, not just this card but my second card, which looks completely different other than the fact that it has a tone-on-tone background and uses a lot of the same die elements, but the panel on it is also popped up. So we're going to take our heart then, and I decided for this background to trim down the background panel so it's not A2 sized. It's actually going to be 4 inches by 5 1/4, which is going to leave me with a nice white border all the way around when I pop this onto my white top fold card base. Now, before I secure my heart to my card, I really should go ahead and take my white card base and glue down that insert piece so that I can get it perfectly positioned. And then I can glue my decorative heart frame with the vines glued behind it in place and embellish. And I played around with this a lot, trying to decide, do I like the tone-on-tone heart back behind this? Do I not? You could definitely leave this part out if you wanted to. You could do another color back behind here if you wanted to. There are a zillion different ways to do this. I'm going to go ahead and utilize that heart I've die cut. I've glued that down to the card base. I used a little post-it tape to help hold that down. Now I'm going to use liquid adhesive to glue my decorative frame. And it looks so pretty with those vines back behind it. I think that's just such a stunning look. And then I did put something heavy on top while the glue dries. Now the word cherish, I have used this for several cards throughout my monthly projects for Spellbinders this month because I love the font and I love the size of it. I'm going to die cut that from glitter cardstock. Right here I just secured the top part of my frame to the background panel with foam adhesive that pops it up and gives it some fantastic dimension. And I've die cut a bunch of flowers using both of the flower shapes from the large Die of the Month kit from smooth white cardstock. Just a scrap of white cardstock I had laying around. I die cut a bunch of them, and I'm going to adorn the leaf design there in the background with these. I'm leaving a little spot kind of right across the middle because that's where the word cherish is going to go. And there's no need to put any flowers really back behind there. The cherish word that I was talking about a second ago, I'm actually going to die cut this from white glitter cardstock that's been adhered to fun foam with stick-it adhesive, which gives it a little dimension. And I'm just going to kind of carefully pop it out. The fun foam tends to not like to let it just release from the paper very easily, but this is a fantastic way to create a dimensional die cut greeting. One of my favorite things to do with a scripty style sentiment. And then we're just popping that right over the center of our heart. And the addition of the white glitter helps this stand out a little bit, plus it really complements the glittery iridescence of the diagonal stripe background. Let's die cut some more flowers and finish adding these to our background. So just adding little dabs of glue, popping these flowers down in place, and then embellishing the center with some little jewels. These are clear crystal jewels I'm adding with the crystal katana, which makes picking them up and putting them right where I want them to go so easy. I think the more flowers you add here around the heart, the better. It's a really fun effect. I love the size of these flowers. And I'm even going to add some little flowers kind of trailing down along the right side of the card, almost like they have fallen from this design. That's going to kind of help tie it all together. You would not have to add any additional sentiments if you don't want to. However, I really love to add a little stamped phrase that's trimmed into a thin strip whenever I use a die cut greeting like this. So it's something that you'll see me do quite a lot, and I'm going to do that again today, just using a stamp set from my stash. So there are my flowers. At this point, you really could leave your card as is. It could be all finished. I also went ahead and just scattered a few random jewels throughout. I thought a few more little bits of sparkle throughout the design would be a nice little finishing touch. And then I will stamp that final sentiment here in a second as well to add to my card. I'm stamping the greeting from the Simon Says Stamp Stained Glass Love stamp set with Fawn Lobster Red ink on smooth white cardstock. It says you forever and always, so the sentiment will read cherish you forever and always, which I think is really pretty. We will trim this down into a thin strip, add a little adhesive to the back, and then pop this in place, kind of overlapping parts of the dimensional greeting and that really pretty decorative heart from the Cherish Die of the Month collection. And that really finishes off the design beautifully. Now for my second card share today, we're going to use a lot of the same dies, but we're going to incorporate the small die of the month, which has those fabulous paper doll building dies. And this time I am going to share an idea of having one of the little dolls, this time a girl, popping out from the heart, holding that heart balloon that's been stamped, and then we're going to embellish the heart frame with some florals and different things from that large die of the month. Let's start with the small die of the month. I have die cut the skin from smooth white cardstock. If you watched my other video featuring the small die of the month club kit dies, which I will link to at the end of this video, I did the same thing. I really, for the skin, I like coloring it in with Copic markers. I think you get beautiful shading that way, and you can really customize it. I went a little bit darker with my skin tone here. I think this would work with a lot of different hair colors if you wanted to, but I incorporated a lot more of E15 and 13 and 11. Really, the only time I used E00 was as a base, and then I used the other three colors completely over that to shade it in. I also kept the coloring only to the part of the face that's going to be seen below the hair, and the hair was die cut from a base color of cardstock that already had color to it. I did this in my other video. This is vanilla malt cardstock from Fawn, and then I feathered in E55 and E31 to give it that fantastic shading. Everything else for the paper doll image is not going to be shaded. The clothing is going to be die cut from patterned paper, and the eyes and the cheeks are just going to be solid patterned paper. But I think it really makes the face pop when it's been colored in with Copics or had the addition of Copics for depth and dimension. For me, it's just something I really like, and it's really quick and easy. Make sure and do the arms. Now the only thing about this is I am not going to need all the elements for the doll. I actually ended up not needing the legs here, so I can save those for another project because I'm going to have her popping up from inside of the heart. Let's set her aside for just a second. We will come back to her in a minute, and let's stamp our tone-on-tone background. Instead of stamping and embossing this time, we are going to stamp a tone-on-tone completely, taking Lawn Fawn Chili Pepper cardstock with Lawn Fawn Chili Pepper ink and stamping this awesome Simon Says Stamp Damask background. This is from their new You Are Loved release. And I am doing this in my Misty so that I can stamp this twice. I had a feeling it's a new stamp to me. I've never stamped it before. It's a huge surface area anyway. A lot of times with a 6x6 stamp like this, you may need to stamp it twice to get good coverage. And I did go ahead and stamp this twice. By stamping it twice, even though we're using dye ink, which dries fairly quickly, it stayed wet for a little bit longer. And I want to stamp sentiments on my background and emboss them. So I would recommend either letting this sit and dry for a while. I went ahead and die cut the heart from it, and I actually got ink all over my die cut plates and had to clean them. So I would let it sit and dry, or I would hit it with a heat tool, which is what I'm going to do before I emboss, stamp and emboss on this, because I don't want embossing powder sticking to this background. But look how beautiful that damask background is. I can't say enough about this. I want to do tone-on-tone backgrounds for everything with this stamp. I think it is stunning used like this and so, so pretty. So instead of being in the upper left, like our last card, we are going to die cut our heart opening in the lower right. Still offset, but just change the position of it just a little bit. This time, again, just like the last card, we are going to save that heart die cut because we are going to glue that directly to our card base. But I did not trim down my background panel. We are going to leave it A2 sized, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. We're going to put adhesive on the card where that heart goes. Go ahead and glue that to the base of the card. And then we're going to cover the back of that panel with foam adhesive to pop it up. I'm also not going to back my die cut heart shape, which I die cut from white cardstock this time as a nice contrast, keeping with the red and white theme we've got going with these cards. I did not use the vines for the back of it because we're just going to use some of those pretty vine and leaf pieces and flowers kind of coming up the sides of the heart around the girl. I let the background stamping really kind of shine for this one and use the flowers as accents along the sides. There are just a million ways to use these. I really love the florals. Now I stamped my greeting once with clear embossing ink. I used the Simon Says Stamp Bestie and Tiny Words stamp sets to get my greetings. And there were places where my embossing powder was sticking, so I didn't get my background super dry with my heat tool before I stamped. I removed those with a paintbrush, but I just felt like I wasn't getting a super great stamped and embossed impression. There were a couple spots that were really just a little bit not as crisp as I wanted them to be. So I ended up cleaning the area, putting it back in my stamp positioner tool. I did not remove the stamps. I have learned to kind of leave them there and make sure everything works out before I remove them. And I am going to stamp and emboss again. And this is going to give me a fantastic, perfectly stamped and embossed sentiment that's really nice and bright white. Once I've embossed that, I'm going to buff away the remaining powder off of the sentiment. It reads, "Thank you for being my person, hugs and love," which I think is a great best friends kind of card. Or depending on what other sentiment you use, if you use one to decorate the balloon like I did, it could be used for something else, but I'm going to use the BFFs sentiment from the Bestie stamp set. Let's assemble our paper doll. I am assembling the head to the collar of the dress, and then the head and collar to the dress piece, the eyes, the hair. There's lots of ways to design the hair. I originally thought I would just do a ponytail, a regular ponytail, just one, because I think that's a really cute look. But with my card design, I just thought it worked better to do 2 pigtails instead. So even though I added 1 to begin with, we are going to go back in and die cut another piece of hair and add the remaining pony or little pigtail there because I really, really like that look, I guess. I'm also going to mark on the dress piece because I need to pop this girl up because she sticks outside the heart, just like I do the frame. And I've already put my foam adhesive on the back of the frame. I'm going to pop that down in place, but I trimmed off the part that wouldn't go back behind this panel very well. So that's what I used the pencil for, and then I just trimmed that up. I'm going to flip her over, add foam adhesive to the parts of her that are inside the frame. So the top of her head, we're going to glue actually directly to the panel, but everything below that is going to be popped up with foam adhesive, which gives her some nice dimension. It makes it look like she's coming out of this heart holding her little heart balloon. And I ran out of my large white foam adhesive squares, so I used some black ones. Because this is pretty dark cardstock and you aren't going to be able to tell, it wasn't a big deal. Those black foam adhesive squares are fantastic if you're using a black cardstock, so you don't see the white foam adhesive. Popped her down. Where I used the glue, I did put something heavy on top to hold that down in place. And I've die cut the balloon heart from the small die of the month from some of that same chili pepper cardstock. I'm going to use the BFF's stamp from the Simon Says Stamp Bestie stamp set to stamp that right on my heart with clear embossing ink. Emboss this with white embossing powder. And then we are going to wrap her arms around the heart and make it so it looks like she's holding it. I'm going to tell you, I fiddled with her outfit. I added the ruffle sleeves. I fiddled with the arms, and you end up not seeing any of that. So I wouldn't have had to add that ruffle part. But at first, I thought it was going to be visible, and so I did. Kind of just one of those things that's trial and error. But if you are creating something similar, I wanted to share with you that you probably would not have to do that. So I'm just going to take my heart and the arm and kind of wrap it around this way. That gave me a better guide than trying to put the arm on her and then wrapping around the heart and maybe not having it come out right. So I started by wrapping the front part, the hand part, around the heart and then bending it upwards. I'm actually going to trim off anything that you can see hanging off the edge, gluing that down in place. And a little tip, if you are working with small things that you need to hold in place while the glue dries, a pair of little tweezers is fantastic for this because you can just simply hold that there and it will secure the glue until that glue dries, which is really quickly. Now I wanted the arms to match, so we're going to wrap the other one around. Again, add a little bit of liquid glue. We'll hold that down. And I tried to make them kind of about as even as possible. Played with it a little bit. And there's what it's going to look like as she's holding that. So about this point, I thought, well, I probably need those little ruffles up at the shoulders. But I did end up moving the heart up high enough that you're not even going to see that. So while I left this part in because I wanted you to see kind of some trial and error. For one thing, I did not add the ruffles to the sleeve before I put her onto the card, which I should have. So I tried to use foam adhesive to attach these. And they're so teeny tiny, it really didn't work very well. What I ended up finding that worked, especially if you don't want to add the heart balloon, but you still want to have a kid popping out, and you've not added the sleeves to the dress image, is putting a little glue on it and using your tweezers. So I used the tweezers to put it in place and then just held it there with the tweezers while the glue dried, and that worked great. So maybe you want her to be hanging out of the heart and she could hold a banner, or she could hold the heart down lower, whatever it might be, if you want to see more of her cute outfit. because a lot of that really sweet little dress that I die cut from pattern paper does get covered up in this case. Another idea is you could always just have her hold something smaller. Die cut a smaller heart that doesn't cover up as much of the outfit. It's really just up to you. So when I took this heart, and really now that I have the arms in place and know exactly where they're going to go, I realized that all that work I did with the sleeves was kind of for naught. But again, if you're creating a different kind of design, I hope that gives you an idea of how to fix a couple of those things. I've glued her heart, her holding the heart with her arms. I've added some white highlights to the eyes with a white pin. And now comes the final finishing details. So let's add her other pigtail and get that positioned. I tried to get them positioned as even as possible, and then add the little pigtail holder that's been die cut from pattern paper to match, which they die cut as a set. I already had that. I just die cut the other pigtail so that she could have two. And then I'm taking leaves and stems from the large die of the month, and we are going to decorate the sides of our heart. I also added the little cheek pieces from light pink cardstock. And to keep with the red and white theme, I am going to die cut my stems and leaves from either white glitter cardstock or vellum. I thought that would be a nice contrast, especially because our frame is white and I didn't want the white cardstock to blend into it. I just wanted it to be something similar. So I've got white glitter cardstock and vellum for these, and I'm going to layer the stems first, and then we will go in and die cut the flowers from the large die of the month from pattern papers that we're going to glue to the little areas on these stems where it looks like a flower might naturally go. So little dabs of glue, we'll just add lots of little flowers. I used a couple of different patterns just for interest. I thought the pattern paper would show up better than red cardstock. The red cardstock, there's a lot of red cardstock on this card, so the pattern paper helps break up that a little bit, but it's still a tone-on-tone pattern paper, which works really well. These are all from my stash. I've had them forever, so if you have pattern papers in your stash, I actually just went through and organized all my 6x6 pattern paper by color. And I am especially drawn to tone on tone, always have been, even back in my scrapbooking days. So for me, I organized it by color, and that works really great because I knew I wanted reds, so I was able to flip to the reds and grab those really easily. I'm going to do a little trio of flowers right here at the base, and then I thought it would balance out my design really well to have another little sprig coming up out of the right side of the card with a bloom. So kind of up there above the right of the heart balloon, I'm going to have another little spray come out with a bloom, and then we're going to finish our card by adding a scattering of those clear jewels that we used on the last card. We're just going to adorn the center of all of our blooms with those, again using the crystal katana to easily pick those up and put them down in place. And my tweezers come in so handy. You can see I used them to hold that flower down while I was working on the rest of the design. You can just pick up those jewels and pop them down in place very, very simply. And that finishes off the blooms beautifully, ties into our red and white color theme, really, really nice. And those little sprays of flowers just added the perfect finishing touch to this card. Completely different look than the other card, completely different than my other two paper doll cards, but yet enough the same that all of it really just kind of goes together really beautifully. I did add some honeybee stamps white heart accents after I was done videoing. I felt like I needed another little pop of white, so that's where all those little hearts came from on the paper doll card. Here is a look at both of my finished cards featuring that large Spellbinders die of the month Cherish Club Kit. The supplies I used to create these cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Spellbinders club kit dies that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.